Hi, and welcome back to Daf Yomi B'Iyin, and welcome to Baba Basra. We're going to start Masechta by studying Ptosis Lefichach. So the Mishnah tells us about this whole case of two people sharing a common courtyard, how they put up a wall in the middle, what kind of wall they put up, and many other halachas about this wall. Now, right away in the beginning of the Gemara, there's a whole fight about how to translate the word mechitza. First opinion says it means a wall, an actual physical partition. The second opinion says no, it just means a division. So for the sake of brevity, we're going to go with the second interpretation, which is the halachically accepted one. And according to that interpretation, the Mishnah is teaching us the halacha of hezek riyah. Hezek riyah literally is damaging by looking at somebody, meaning that the rabbis instituted a halacha that one neighbor could force his neighbor to put up a wall, help pay for the expense and contribute space for half of the wall in the middle to ensure his privacy, so you can't look at him while he's in his chutzner doing whatever he's doing. So the Mishnah teaches one neighbor could force the neighbor to help with the wall, and then the Mishnah says the word lefichach, therefore. Now lefichach is a very significant word. You see that in the Mishnah or in a Gemara or anywhere. Lefichach is saying, based on what I just said, therefore the following is the halacha. Meaning what? Since we just said that the rabbis made this halacha that a neighbor could force the other neighbor to help put up the wall, therefore if that wall fell down and there was obviously no documentation or witnesses about what happened here, like we're approaching the situation, we just see this wall that fell down in the middle and they're fighting about the wall. One of them is saying that I built the whole thing myself on my side. The other one says, what do you mean we built it together? Says the Mishnah, since there is this halacha that because of hezek riyah, the rabbi said you do have to help build the wall, you could sue him, force him to help pay for it, we assume that he used that halacha, he's not going to pay for it himself, and that he had the neighbor pay for half, and that they built it together. So says the Mishnah, and Rashi explains the Mishnah based on the Gemara on Daled, at least the simple reading of the Gemara on Daled, which is, the Gemara concludes, the Mishnah is specifically referring to, it's coming to teach us that even if the stones fell on one particular side, so that seemingly that person who owns that side has a muhsik on the stones. He has physical possession of the stones, and therefore normally, anyways, we say that whoever has physical possession and there's a dispute about whose it is, that person, the muhsik, could say, Hamotzi mechavel avaraya, burden of proof is on this guy who's trying to say they're his stones. The Mishnah is coming to say that we don't say that here. Even though this one is muhsik, because of the fact that the rabbi said the neighbor, both neighbors have to contribute, we assume that's what happened, and therefore they divide the stones. That, according to Rashi and the simple reading of Daf Daled, is the point that our Mishnah is coming to say here. But Ptosis says, no, that's not what it means. And Ptosis has two reasons for saying that. The main reason is he starts off with the Gemara and Daf Daled Amud Beis. Daled Amud Beis is discussing a later case in our Mishnah of Bicker. Bicker means a valley, and it means you have two neighboring grain fields. Now by grain fields there's no privacy issue, there's no hezek riyah. Therefore there's no halacha there that a neighbor could force the other neighbor to help build a wall in the middle dividing their grain fields. The Mishnah says, so if you want to make a wall, go right ahead, put it on your side and pay with it with your own money. The Mishnah says that if you do choose to make a wall in a bikkah, you should probably put up a chazis. You should put up a physical marker that shows that you built the wall yourself. In case there's any dispute later, it'll prove that you built the wall. And then the Mishnah says, let's say they both agree to together build a wall between their grain fields. In that case, the Mishnah says they should both put a chazis. They should both put a physical marker in the wall to show that they both built it, so there's no problems later on. The Gemara in Daled Amud Beis asks, what's the point of that? Let them both not put any chazis, and then we'll assume that they built it together. So asks the Gemara. So Ptosis says, what kind of question is that? According to Rashi, what do you mean they should both not put a chazis? What happens if it falls on one guy's side? He's going to then claim he's a muhsik. And in the case of Bicker, there is no concept of privacy as a griya that creates a proof that they both did it together. There's no such thing in a Bicker. So the muhsik would win, and this other guy would lose his half. So what kind of question is the Gemara asking? Don't put a chazis, it'll all be fine. Not true. If it falls on that guy's side, he'll use his muchsik to keep the entire wall. So Ptosis says, we see from the Gemara, that not like Rashi, we see that for some reason, which Ptosis is going to talk about next, we don't go by muchsik here. Now what's the reason that we don't go by muchsik? Of course, Ptosis agrees that normally if somebody has physical possession over the thing they're fighting about, that person is considered the other one, burden of proof is on you. Ptosis explains that no, here it doesn't make sense to follow the muchsik. Why? Because in Ptosis' terminology, the suffix was nolad before it fell on that guy's side. Meaning, the question, the doubt here of who built this wall was already a question before it fell. And therefore, so what that afterwards it fell on one guy's side, that doesn't make him a muchsik. It was already a question earlier. And earlier, when the wall still stood, of course, they were both muchsik. And therefore, what would the court have said had they brought the case then to court? They're fighting, there's no witnesses, they're arguing about who built the wall. The court would have said, divide it, because they're both muchsik, just like the first mission Bav Mitzia. If Shnai Mochsim Betalis, Bezdin says, Yachloku. So that would have been the halacha, and therefore that's already settled. So what? The later falls on one guy's side, that doesn't give him a muchsik. And therefore, Ptosis concludes there is no muchsik in this situation. Now, of course, that means that the Ptosis is going to have to come up with a whole new reading for the Mishnah and the Gemara and Daf Daled, which Ptosis does. We're not going to go into Ptosis' reading, but that's essentially the points that Ptosis says against Rashi's reading. What we want to try to do is explain how would Rashi respond to these points. So regarding point number 1 of this Gemara and Daf Daled Amud Beis, it's interesting because Rashi there gives a specific reading of that Gemara's question. According to Rashi's reading, Ptosis' point, this problem doesn't seem to be a big problem for Rashi. For Rashi there, it's on your sheet, source number 7. Rashi there says, here's what the Gemara is asking. The Gemara is saying that, again, we have a case here in the grain fields, you don't need to put up, there's no privacy. What if they both choose to put up a wall? The Mishnah says they should both put a physical marker that will show they both built the wall. The Gemara asks, let them both not put anything, and the same will be accomplished. We'll assume anyways that they both built it. Rashi explains, you know why? Even if the wall falls on one guy's side, we'll say to that person, that's very nice that you're a muchsik, but excuse me, why then did you not put a chazis there to show that you built it? The lack of the chazis proves that you didn't build it yourself. And we would say that you both built it. And therefore the Gemara says, what's the point of both putting chazis? We would anyways assume that they both built it, even if they didn't, if they left it, nothing. We would assume that. That's the Gemara's question. So the point is that the Gemara is not saying that fundamentally there's no muchsik here. Of course there's a muchsik, just that specifically here. Now once the rabbis said this concept, this halacha of a chazis, then we say to the person, okay, you have a muchsik, that's impressive, but where's your chazis? So that's why the muchsik would lose. But again, on the fundamental level, there is a muchsik. So that's number 1. That's what Rashi could say as far as the proof from Daled Amud Beis. And what about Tosfos' argument that doesn't make any sense to go by muchsik here, seeing as how it was really a question the whole time? If they would have came into court earlier, the court would have said, oh, you're both muchsik, so split it. So what, that it fell on this person's side, that's not a true muchsik. What would Rashi say to that? So I'd like to suggest that let's analyze the specific, the nature of the suffix over here. And the truth is that this particular suffix is something that we call chesaron yediyah. We don't know what happened. There's no record, there's no witnesses, but first of all, they know what happened. They know what happened here most probably, or maybe somebody forgot. But either way, there's an objective reality, something clear that actually happened, just that we don't know. The court doesn't know, there was no proof, there's no witnesses, and therefore we go by the systems that we have. As opposed to, for example, let's say you have a mixture. You have, let's say, somebody's truma fell into a chulin. So now it's all mixed together, it looks exactly the same, it's impossible to find out where it is. That is like an inherent suffix. There's something completely, you can't discern, where the mutter is, where the usr is. That is an inherent doubt. So that would be something else. But here, there's a question about, well, we don't have any proof. We don't know, we forgot, or one person is lying, we don't know what happened here. So Rashi would argue, it does depend on when the issue was presented to the court. Now, of course, if the issue came to the court, then, while the wall was still standing, the court would rule based on the circumstances then, namely, you have a wall right in the middle, both are muchsik, so you split it just like Shnai Mochsim Betalis. But if the cave was only presented to the court at the point when the stones were on one guy's side, the court says, okay, we see stones on one guy's side, he's a muchsik, so he has the right to say, Motzi Mechaver of a Rai. So Rashi would maintain that the muchsik does apply. Because again, it's tricky when you talk about that the suffix was nolad. Rashi might question and say, what exactly does that mean the suffix was nolad? It's not like that example I mentioned of the taruvis. It's not like there was a mixture here. There's an inherent doubt that came into the world. You don't really have that here. It's really just a question of this guy's word against this guy's word, and there's no proof. So Rashi would argue we go by the regular systems, and if the court is presented with the case of you have this person who has some stones on his property, and he says this guy is saying that he built the wall with me, but I say it's not true, and I'm a muchsik and a motzi mechalev v'raya, the court says you're right, and you win. It's just that, in case of a courtyard, since there's a law of Hezekriya, which says that this one has the right to force the other one to help pay for the wall, that breaks the muchsik, that overrides the muchsik. It says we know that they built it together. Of course, he wouldn't just pay for it on his own if he had the option of having the friend pay. So that's why ultimately they split it. But therefore, the reading is clear. According to Rashi, it's only lefichach. It's because of that specific concept of Hezekriya that they split it. Without Hezekriya, we would follow the muchsik and we would say, Hamotzi mechavel avaraya. I hope you found this interesting, and we'll see you in the next video.